Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said great. I'm doing great. Today is going to be kind of a different vlog. This is going to be kind of interesting because, well, definitely interesting because about a year ago, I made a vlog on BUFORD PUSSER, and I started out the vlog by saying there's really only one word that you can use to describe this man: a hero. Well, things have changed. Some new information has come to light, and they now believe BUFORD PUSSER is a murderer. They're actually saying that they have definitive evidence that if he were alive today, they would indict him for the murder of his wife, Pauline Pusser. So when we went and did all that vlog about a year ago, I showed you where all the ambush site was and everything. They had signs all over the place kind of telling the story, and they have since removed those signs. But at that day, we tried to go to his house and it wasn't open. The house is open today, so we're gonna go take a tour of his house. He died, kind of ironically. He had signed a deal to star in the next Walking Tall movie. He's gonna make $1 million, and came back here, went to a fair, and while he was driving home from the fair, his car veered off and he crashed and died. And there was all kinds of speculation as to whether someone sabotaged his car, what happened. Now, people might say, well, it's, you know, it was destiny because of what he had done. But we're gonna go see the house that BUFORD PUSSER lived in. They actually have, I believe, the car that exploded that he died in, and another one of his cars. And we're gonna actually go to where that happened. Daze with Jordan the Lion and you all. It begins right now. So here we are on the border of Mississippi, Rockabilly Way, and right where Tennessee line is. And this is where BUFORD PUSSER's county started, McNairy County. And at the time, right where the border was, there were a lot of, well, they were basically prostitution, gambling, drinking, and BUFORD PUSSER was trying to clean it up. And there was a woman who owned a place out here on the border, literally right across the street from where the borderline was. You can still see the parking lot over here. This was a really famous case BUFORD was involved in. This was the Shamrock Motel. A woman named Louise Hathcock had owned it and ran it. 2 years before the incident, she had killed her husband out here, stating that he was beating her and that she was defending herself. And then fast forward 2 years, some tourists had stopped in here and claimed that the woman had had her purse stolen. And when they came out, they went and told BUFORD PUSSER. They came out to investigate, and while they were here in the front office, Luis's bedroom was right behind the office. And when BUFORD went back there, she grabbed a gun and started shooting at him. That was the story. And BUFORD ended up killing her. And he was cleared by a grand jury of any wrongdoing. But people always said at that time that they thought that BUFORD was dirty, that he had his hand in some of the whiskey operations in Tennessee. And so anybody that was a competitor to those were people that he had it out for. And so that's kind of been one of the underlying stories all these years. So now that we've gotten, they think they have the smoking gun, literally, like they think they have the gun that he used to shoot his wife. Now they have to question everything they ever knew about this man that they all thought was a hero. This whole, you know, now it's not dry. At the time, it was a dry county and everything. So right where this border met, you would have a lot of action. And so you could either have a very honest man or a very corrupt man. And we thought he was an honest man. They made movies about him called Walking Tall with Joe Don Baker. But who knows now? So this is Selmer, Tennessee, and this is where the McNairy County Fair was the day that BUFORD PUSSER died. He went to the fair with his daughter and some friends, and he was in his Corvette traveling home alone with his daughter and some of her friends following a few miles behind in a separate car. Well, you can see as of now, it's still known as the BUFORD Pusser Highway. It's the same route he would have been taking that evening. So when he lost control, he was going up to 100 miles an hour. So far, I haven't seen any part of this road that the speed limit is any higher than 65. So he would have been going 100 miles an hour right about now, because he's going to, here in about 20 seconds, veer to his left, going across the median. So he was coming towards us the way that we were just driving, and then veered across. And here they have a memorial. I don't know how long they'll keep this stuff up. I mean, things are just developing daily now. I feel really bad for his daughter, because his daughter was following behind him and saw the crash, you know, obviously came upon it afterward. And now she's in the position of thinking that her father was a hero for all those years. And now finding out that he's probably most definitely responsible for her mother's death. It says BUFORD Pusser, December 12th, 1937, August 21st, 1974. So this is to commemorate, I guess you would say memorialize, his deadly crash. He was 36 years old, and like I said, he had just signed a contract to be in the next Walking Tall movie for $1 million. It says on December 12th, 1937, BUFORD Pusser was born in Finger, Tennessee in 1962. He became Adamsville's chief of police. He was elected sheriff of McNairy County in 1964. And I believe he was the youngest to ever be elected in Tennessee. It says soon his courageous fight against crime exposed him to much danger and many personal injuries. A movie and a book based on Sheriff Pusser's experiences made him a nationally known hero. He died in an automobile accident here on August 21st, 1974. So he was traveling home, and his home is a museum that actually has the car that he crashed in. And when the press conference was held by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation announcing their findings, the museum closed right away and then reopened, which I'm glad. I mean, you can't change history, even though we're now knowing that it's a different history. I'm glad that they're deciding to keep it open, at least for now. I think if anything, it will probably draw people to want to come and visit and kind of out of the fascination. They did exhume Pauline's body. He lived in Adamsville, so that's where we're going. It was about 10 minutes away from the crash site. So right here at the Adamsville city limit sign, if you walk a little past it, it's right here at the high school, they have a sign promoting the home and museum. He was looked at as such a hero here that they had a yearly festival in his honor. Found this sign along the way that said Ashley Durham Miss Tennessee Teen USA 2006 and Miss Tennessee USA 2011 runner-up for Miss USA 2011. Ashley Durham was from here, and Daddy-O Dewey Phillips, rock and roll pioneer. Tell him Philip sent you. He was one of the people that played Elvis early on in Memphis and played it just continuously, locked himself in the studio and just played it continuously. But I stopped also because here's another kind of welcome to Adamsville, and you can see how big of an inspiration BUFORD was to this town. They have him with that walking tall stick, and it says the home of Sheriff BUFORD Pusser right here on the main city sign. So I'm about a block away from Buford's home, and there's some ball fields, and they've named the park after him. And they have a lot of his history right here. I mean, as far as what we knew, but it says, in memory of a man who walked tall, Buford Hayes Pusser, Buford Pusser Park. They have his image on there, and like I said, yeah, they have a full-on history. And then his home, you can literally see from here, is right there where that sign is. Now, I don't know this for sure, but the fact that there's so many of his signs still up kind of makes me think that they're, I don't know, they're in no hurry to remove them. I'll say that. Some of them they were, I know, like the ambush site and stuff like that, but like the memorial signs, I'm wondering how the town will handle that. There's his home from just driving by. That's what we're gonna tour today. There's your entry gates. Here in the parking lot, they have a giant sheriff's badge. So as I understand it, the property changed a little bit because after Pauline died, there was a fire at the house. So they ended up rebuilding the house in 1971. So she wouldn't have lived in this version, but he did, and his daughter did. But I do remember when I was here before, they weren't open, but they have a Pauline Pusser garden. But they did just rebuild the house on the original location. 10 Commandments. I'll show you her garden before we go in out of respect. Kind of surreal to be here. And there's Pauline's little garden. All right, let's go on in. So as soon as I walked in, this is the inside of the front door. They said no filming. I could take photos, so I'm going to show you all the way around the house. They started it by letting me know that everything in the house was original. Buford rebuilt this house, had the whole thing rebuilt in 1971. Apparently there was a electrical fire from the washer and dryer, and that's what caused it. So when he rebuilt the house, he rebuilt it with a basement and basically made the basement his area. So inside up here in the living room and everything, there's photos. That's Dewana, his daughter with George Jones. Dewana ended up living here after Buford died. So Dewana was still, I think, a minor. So Buford's mother moved in, and those are Buford's boots, some of his law enforcement gear, his identification. That was one of his big sticks, and it's signed. So they have a lot of photos of him. They show you an 8-minute documentary, and the documentary is basically all people from town talking about what a great guy he was. So that was his piano and everything. But basically his mother moved in, took care of Dewana till she turned 18, and then I guess Dewana sold the house to the city, so the city owns the museum, the house, and everything in it. So these are the original carpets, the original couches, the original photos, everything. The Holy Bible, all that stuff was here when he was here. So they didn't really touch upon, as you can see, the carpet. They said, no, we've never replaced the carpet because we figured we wouldn't be able to replace it. And they walked across it. So we just let people walk across it without it being covered or anything. So this was basically the front entryway. They never touch upon, during the time I was in here, anything about the new findings. This is pretty cool because you can see his chair, the couch, everything in here. And around the inside, there's photos of him sitting in various places. So when I was able to find those, I will show you those. But you can see there he is with Johnny Cash and Reverend Billy Graham. There was his chair where he used to sit, and I think he had a TV in here. There's a bust of him that I'll show you right back there behind his head. So you can tell he was highly respected while he was alive. So highly respected that they turned his home directly into a museum. Now that's the kitchen, and they have several photos of him inside the kitchen, sitting up at the counter on the phone. So Pauline would have never lived in this house. She died in 1967 and the house was built in 71. So where their bedroom stood, he ends up turning that bedroom into a memorial room for her. And there was a present that he bought Pauline when they were engaged. There's wedding photos. There's certificates of his achievements in here. Kind of a hodgepodge of things. Photos from different times. Photos from their wedding day, which is what that is right there. So they, give you the impression that they were in love. And there's the photos. He would have been sitting right there at that chair. And you can see him on that very phone in that photo. And then the photo behind it, when we get to that one, you'll see him actually sitting right there at the counter. And I'm going to try and match it right here for you. So things like that were kind of fascinating. So now I went back and started touring some of the bedrooms. Now he had a stepdaughter, or he had a stepdaughter who didn't live here. She was living with them when Pauline was alive, but he had a daughter with Pauline named Dewana, and then he had a stepson that was Pauline's son, and his name was Michael, so he also had a room. And this is looking out their front door. Just in case, if he was looking out to see who was here, just wanted to give you that view. So we're walking from the front entryway, the official entry to the house, up the hallway with family photos. And the first room that we're going to end up going into was the room to the right. And that was Pauline's room. And that's what these signs are basically saying, that what survived from the fire of Pauline's they put in here and made kind of a makeshift memorial space, a memorial bedroom for her and Buford. But Buford made a room downstairs that he slept in. So you can see some of her belongings in there. Some of her clothes. Now knowing that he's accused of being the one to kill her, one of the stories that I've heard is that someone who investigated found out that she was sneaking out of the house wearing 2 sets of clothes because she didn't want him to see her leaving. Or she was going to leave him, apparently, and didn't want him to notice that things were being packed. So now we're in Dewana's room, their daughter, and a lot of the items they say were hers from childhood and gifts from Buford. Different things they won at fairs or gifts he gave her. I love that they kept everything the way it was. So now we're working our way down the hallway again. And this one kind of shocked me because when I just looked down and kind of noticed the old carpeting and everything. The walls, the old wood panel walls. But when we got here, this tells us that this was Michael's room, his stepson, and that when Buford died, instead of coming to Buford's funeral, Elvis Presley came and spent time here in Mike's bedroom with Mike because he felt like if he went to the funeral, it would be too much hoopla and it would take away the focus from Buford. So they have that written on here that while he was visiting, he would be in here, and then out in the living room, and Dewana kept poking her head out, trying to see down the hall to see Elvis sitting down there on the couch. So now we're turning around, we're walking back, and this takes us to the bathroom. This was the family bathroom, and what survived from the fire they put in here, which is basically what this says, is that the clothes hamper and the toilet and things like that, the scale, those all survived the fire, so they moved him in here. Nice bathroom. So now we're working our way back down to the living room. And this was actually so that we could go down the stairs. And I figured I'd give you a second look at kind of one of the recreational spaces. That's where they say Elvis would have been sitting on that couch when he was there. I don't know. If you look at his schedule, he had a really busy schedule and he was playing a lot of shows. He would have really had to have taken off. So this takes us down to Buford's room. And to me, this was the most fascinating space in the whole house because, well, you'll see. Once we get down here, it is definitely trapped in time. So down here where they have display cases, but behind the display cases is his living space. Well, he not sleeping, but that would have been like his living room down here. So he had a TV, he had a couch. He was supposed to, the day he died, he was signed a $2 million deal to be in the next 2 Walking Tall movies. So that was his gun. And he was going to get, I think, $1 million a picture, and he was going to make part 2 and part 3. But when he died that day, they ended up having to recast it. So we can see all of his belongings. They have, that's how popular he was, BUFORD Pusser Day. And he was sheriff for 3 terms. So this was stating that Tanya Tucker sent that little wreath that's here, that guitar wreath kind of thing. She sent that as a gift to Buford's grave when he died. And that's Buford's bedroom. So we'll get a different angle from it as we walk around. But that's where he would have slept once he built the house. And there's his clothing, suits, all that stuff. And what else was interesting was once we got down here, I noticed he basically moved his sheriff's office once he was not elected again. He moved his sheriff's office down here. So there's bullets, casings, different articles that he was involved in, historical things. That's the staircase we just came down. It's handicap accessible if anybody's wondering. So that room in front of us to the kind of the left, that one's the bathroom right there to the left. But on the right, that's the sheriff room. So in here, if you went in here, that was his bathroom. And that also connected over to his bedroom, which you'll see right here. And then once I walked out of this room, I went into the next room, and that's where I was like, oh, these are all either gifts that law enforcement people have given him or his accommodations. They had the door from his sheriff's office, which was right there. McNairy County Sheriff. They had not only the door, but they had his desk. They had a recreation of what it would have looked like as far as like a prison cell and everything in there. You can see there some of his personal belongings in there. They even had, a lot of cases that were just dedicated to gifts that, because he inspired so many people to become law enforcement. These were some of the weapons that he had, but then this other case was like paraphernalia that he had confiscated in the county. So you can see bongs and stuff like that in there. That would have been his office chair, his desk, all kinds of, different badges and honorary things he would have gotten. So this was the kind of the crazy thing, is that when you walk out of here, it takes you to the gift shop. And that was the first time I actually heard someone talking about the press conference, and they don't believe the accusations. And I'm going to go into a little bit more of that later on. So they have a full gift shop. I asked them how well the gift shop does, and they said they sell tons and tons of stuff. So lots of shirts, lots of Walking Tall sticks. Right there you can see that you can get one with his name embossed in it. Badges. I mean, they had a lot of different stuff. But of course, one of the things that I was most excited about coming here to see was I was really excited to see his cars. Even though the one was the crash car, I mean, there's nothing left of it. I mean, it's like the bones, as you can see right here. That was the one he died in. That was the fiery crash. And apparently, the person he talked to last has now said that Buford had been drinking at the fair, and so he was drunk when he was driving home. But there was, at the time, they were saying that there were parts of the car where it looked like something had been cut and sabotaged intentionally. That was his other car. And they also had some of the flowers that were at the crash site after his death. So you technically can see 2 cars. They don't have, obviously, the car that Pauline's murder took place in, but that is the one that Buford crashed it, going over 100 miles an hour the day he signed a $2 million contract to be in part 2 and part 3 of Walking Tall. Wow, that was really cool. Sorry I couldn't film it. That was their one rule, no filming. So hope you didn't mind me showing all the photos. They had some really amazing stuff in there. They still have a very positive look at Buford and we go over to the cemetery, which we're going to go now, I'm going to tell you what I overheard them saying in the gift shop, because they didn't have an official stance or anything about the press conference, but I heard someone in the gift shop kind of telling people what they thought. So out here is the grave site. The biggest one out here, kind of like the Walking Tall Big Stick. It's Buford and Pauline's dual grave. But I know her brother was the one that agreed to have her exhumed. Apparently the rumor, or what I've heard, is that Pauline had left him at one point and that she was going to file for divorce. So that's because I was kind of curious as to what people thought the motive, why he would do it if he is the one that's accused of doing it. And that's what I've heard, is that she was supposedly going to leave him. Here's her gravestone, and right over here is Buford's. So what I heard him saying in the gift shop is people were asking about, you know, what's going to change. And they said, did you see the press conference? And the people said, no, I didn't. And they said, well, nothing's concrete. You know, it's a lot of he said, she said stuff, and there's nothing definitive. You know, people, there's always somebody out there trying to make money, is what I heard him say. And they said that, you know, because they exhumed Pauline to investigate, because basically Mike Elam is the one that uncovered all this. He eventually had somebody contact him with what they thought was the murder weapon, and they shot some shells from it to get casings, and they matched the casings that were in Pauline. So that's part of, you know, what brought it all together. But I watched part of the press conference, and what I heard him say was that if he were alive today, that they would indict him for her murder. So I don't know. You know, it's got to be tough, because the people of this town knew him, and the people that work in that museum knew him, or knew people that knew him, and everybody liked him. From everything we've heard, just everybody liked him. Here's Dewana's grave, his daughter. She died in 2018. Just everybody had nothing but nice things to say about him if you were on the good side of the law. And if you were on the bad side of the law, then they liked you. I mean, the other people liked you because of the way he dealt with the wrong side of the law. So a lot of the people in this town really, really love him and knew him personally. And so it's got to be hard to want to hear that they're accusing him of what they're accusing him of now. But I mean, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, I don't think would just, you know, do a press conference about this after all these years if they weren't absolutely sure. So I did hear him say that the ashes of some of their babies, I guess, were scattered out here. So the people in the gift shop were saying, you know, it's sad they had to exhume her, because then they're exhuming, you know, several other, you know, graves as well. But Dewana was always championed him. In fact, she was the one that was there when he died. She said he gurgled something out when she got there, because she saw the crash and everything and pulled off and ran over. And she said, I want to believe that he said my name and that he knew I was there at the end. So I'm, you know, it's good that she's not alive to know what's being accused, but it will be interesting to see how it all develops. As of now, I was curious as to, you know, like I said, I was curious as to what the town would think or how the museum would view it. And nobody officially made a statement, but what I overheard in the gift shop and what they were telling people their belief was that they don't think there's anything to it. So have a great night, everyone. We'll see you next time. From Adamsville, Tennessee, goodbye.